Far away, in a part of space that no map had ever fully explored, a small ship moved quietly through the dark. It was not a warship. It was a scout ship, thin and fast, built for one purpose only: to explore, to record, and to return home with answers. Inside the ship sat a young pilot named Vex. She was not old by the standards of her people, the Coalition, but she was skilled. She had been chosen for this mission because she was careful, calm, and never panicked, even when things went wrong. Her people were proud of her. They believed she would go far. The Coalition was a strong group of species that had joined together many centuries ago. Over time, they had grown powerful. They built great cities in space, traveled between stars with ease, and believed, deep down, that they were now the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. They had explored many systems. They had met other species, some friendly, some not. But nothing had ever truly frightened them. Until today, Vex's ship suddenly beeped. A soft, steady sound. She sat up straight and checked her screen. A signal, not a normal one. It repeated again and again, slow and steady, almost like a heartbeat. Strange, she whispered to herself. She had trained for years and she had heard many kinds of signals before. Distress calls, old broken satellites, even messages from long-dead ships. But this one felt different. It was not broken. It was not random. It felt intentional, like something or someone wanted to be found, wanted to be. She opened a channel back to the Coalition Council, the group of leaders who guided her people's decisions. "This is Vex," she said. "I've picked up an unknown signal. It's old. Very old. But it's still active." There was a pause before Elder Wren, the oldest member of the council, replied. His voice was calm, but there was something careful in the way he spoke. "Where is the signal coming from?" Vex checked her instruments. "It's coming from a sector we've never explored. Deep space, far from any known star system." Another pause. Longer this time. "Do not answer it," Elder Wren said finally. "Do you understand me, Vex? Whatever it is, whatever it says, do not respond, just observe. Record everything, and return home immediately after." Vex frowned. It was a strange order. In all her years of training, she had never been told to ignore a signal completely. Usually the Coalition wanted to understand everything. They wanted to make contact, to learn, to grow their knowledge. "May I ask why?" she said carefully. Elder Wren was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. "Because some old stories tell us that certain places in this galaxy should be left alone." The channel went silent after that. Vex sat in her chair, staring at the screen where the signal continued to repeat, slow and steady, like something breathing in the dark. She should have turned around right then. She should have followed the order exactly as it was given. But Vex was young, and young minds are often filled with a hunger to know more, even when they are told not to look. She adjusted her course. Just to observe, she told herself. Just to see where the signal was coming from. Nothing more. The deeper she flew into that unknown sector, the stranger things became. Space itself seemed quieter here, as if even the stars did not want to be near this place. There were no nearby planets, no asteroid fields, nothing that should explain why a signal would be sent from this exact location. Then, on her screen, something appeared. At first it looked like a small dot far in the distance, but as she moved closer, the dot grew larger and larger, until Vex realized it was not a small object at all. It was massive. A structure floated silently in the black emptiness of space. It was easily the size of a small moon, built from a dark metal that seemed to absorb the light around it instead of reflecting it. Its shape was strange too, not round like most ships, not built with sharp angles like Coalition stations. Instead, it looked almost organic, curved and smooth like something grown rather than built. Vex's ship automatically began recording everything. Cameras, sensors, every piece of information it could gather. "This is Vex," she said into her communicator, her voice slightly shaking now. I have found the source of the signal. It's a structure. Massive. I've never seen anything like it. There was no reply. She tried again. Elder Wren, do you copy? Still nothing. The connection to the Coalition Council had gone silent. Whether it was distance, interference, or something else entirely, Vex did not know. She should have turned back immediately. Instead, she moved closer. As her ship approached, she noticed something else. Wreckage. Small pieces of broken metal floated around the structure, scattered like leaves after a storm. She scanned them carefully. They were old. Extremely old. Based on the decay patterns, some of it looked like it had been floating there for thousands of years. But there was something odd about the wreckage. It didn't match any known species ship designs, not Coalition, not any of the other civilizations they had encountered. And strangely, there were no bodies, no remains, just broken metal, as if whatever had destroyed these ships had done so completely, leaving nothing behind. Vex felt a chill run through her, even though her ship's temperature had not changed. She scanned the giant structure again, searching for an entrance, a weak point, anything that might explain what it was. As her sensors moved across its surface, she noticed faint markings carved into the metal. Symbols. Rows and rows of them, covering large sections of the structure like ancient writing. She had never seen this language before. It was not Coalition script. It was not any known alien language in the Coalition's massive historical records. And yet, somehow, looking at it made her feel a strange sense of unease, as if some ancient warning was written there that she could not read, but could still feel. Elder Wren, she said again, though she doubted anyone could hear her now. I'm going to get closer. I need answers. Her ship crept nearer, engines humming softly. The massive structure loomed above her now, blocking out the stars behind it, making her small ship feel like nothing more than a speck of dust. And then, without warning, everything changed. A low hum vibrated through her ship, not from her own engines, from outside. The massive structure was reacting to her presence. Lights, faint and pale blue, began to switch on across its surface, tracing patterns along the strange symbols she had seen earlier. It was as if the entire structure was slowly waking up after a very, very long sleep. Vex's hands froze over her controls. Every instinct told her to turn around immediately, to run, to follow the order she had ignored. But her ship's systems suddenly locked. The controls did not respond. No, 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 she whispered, pressing buttons frantically. Nothing worked. Her engines powered down on their own. Her ship was being pulled forward slowly, toward the massive structure, as if caught in some invisible hand. She tried the communicator one more time, her voice trembling now. This is Vex. I need help. My systems are not responding. I'm being pulled toward the connection cut off completely. Her small ship floated helplessly forward, drawn steadily toward a dark opening that had formed on the surface of the ancient structure, an opening that had not existed just moments before. Back at the Coalition Council chamber, Elder Wren sat in silence, staring at a blank screen. The connection to Vex's ship had been lost several minutes ago. Around him, other council members whispered nervously. Should we send a rescue team? One of them asked. Elder Wren did not answer right away. His eyes were distant, as if remembering something from long, long ago, something that had been passed down through old stories, warnings whispered from one generation of leaders to the next. There are old records, he finally said quietly. Records so old that most of our people have forgotten them. Records of a species that came before all of us. A species that, according to legend, was here long before the Coalition ever existed. The room fell silent. What species? Someone asked carefully. Elder Wren's expression grew troubled. The stories call them many names depending on which world you ask, but there was one name that appeared again and again across cultures who never even knew of each other's existence. He paused, as if hesitant to say the word out loud. Humans. A few council members exchanged confused glances. The name meant nothing to most of them. It was an old word, buried deep in ancient texts, spoken of only in myths and half-forgotten legends. They were said to be small, Elder Wren continued. Weak even compared to many species in the galaxy. Not particularly strong, not particularly fast. Nothing about them, on the surface, seemed remarkable. Then why does the legend speak of them with such fear? Another council member asked. Elder Wren's eyes darkened. Because the stories say that humans should have gone extinct. Many, many times. War, disease, disaster after disaster. And yet somehow, they never did. They always found a way to survive. And the stories say that something happened to them long ago that changed them forever. After that, they simply disappeared. No one saw them again. No one knew if they had left the galaxy, or if they had become something else entirely. The room was silent except for the quiet hum of machines. You believe this structure belongs to them? Someone finally asked. Elder Wren looked back at the blank screen where Vex's signal had disappeared minutes ago. I believe, he said slowly, that we may have just found out. Inside the ancient structure, Vex's ship came to a gentle stop. The pulling force released her, and her systems flickered back online one by one as if something had simply allowed her to regain control. She sat frozen for a moment, breathing hard, staring out of her viewport. She was inside now. Inside the massive structure. And what she saw took her breath away. Took her breath. The interior was enormous, far larger than the outside had suggested, as if space itself worked differently in here. Soft blue light illuminated long corridors that stretched endlessly in every direction. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. No signs of life, no movement. And yet somehow she did not feel alone. Vex slowly guided her ship forward, deeper into the massive chamber. As she moved, more lights activated along the walls, almost as if the structure was guiding her, showing her the way. She reached a large open area, similar to a hangar, and gently landed her ship. Her hands trembled as she stepped outside, breathing in air that, according to her scanners, was somehow still breathable after countless years. The chamber walls were covered in more of the strange symbols she had seen outside, but here, closer, she noticed something else. Images. Carved pictures alongside the symbols, telling some kind of story. She walked closer, studying them carefully. The images showed a species she did not recognize. Small compared to many known aliens, standing on two legs, without any obvious special abilities. In the earliest pictures, they appeared weak, struggling, fighting wars against each other, facing disasters, disease, and destruction. But as the images continued along the wall, something changed. The pictures showed the same species standing together, rebuilding after disaster, reaching toward the stars despite everything working against them. Image after image showed this species overcoming challenge after challenge, growing stronger not through natural power, but through sheer refusal to give up. Vex's heart pounded as she reached the final image on the wall. It showed this same small species, standing before massive machines and ships, far more advanced than anything the Coalition currently possessed. And beneath the final image was a single word, carved deep into the metal. A word she somehow understood, despite never having seen this language before. Humanity. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath her feet. A deep mechanical voice echoed through the chamber, calm and clear, speaking in her own language as if it had translated itself instantly. You should not have come here. Vex spun around, her heart racing, searching for the source of the voice. But the chamber remained empty. No one was visible. Just the endless blue light and the ancient carvings staring back at her. The voice spoke again, quieter this time, almost sorrowful. But since you are here, it is time you learned the truth. The lights around her flickered, and far in the distance, deep within the structure, something massive began to stir, something that had been sleeping for a very, very long time. The voice faded into silence, but its words stayed with Vex like an echo that would not disappear. It is time you learned the truth. She stood frozen in the massive chamber, her breathing shallow, her eyes scanning every corner for movement. Nothing. Just the soft blue light, the ancient carvings, and the silence pressing down on her like a heavy weight. Then, slowly, something began to happen at the far end of the chamber. A section of the wall which had looked completely solid moments ago began to glow. Lines of light traced themselves across its surface, forming a shape, a doorway, opening from nothing, as if the structure itself was deciding to trust her just a little. Vex hesitated. Every part of her training told her to run back to her ship, to escape this place immediately, to forget she had ever seen the signal at all. But another part of her, the same part that had made her ignore Elder Wren's warning in the first place, pulled her forward. She stepped through the doorway. On the other side was a room unlike anything she had ever seen. Rows of strange machines lined the walls, humming softly, still somehow powered after all this time. In the center of the room stood a large circular platform, glowing faintly, waiting. As Vex stepped closer, the platform activated on its own. A shape began to form above it, not a solid object, but a projection, flickering slightly like an old memory trying to stay alive. The shape slowly became clearer. It was a figure, a single figure standing tall watching her. Vex took a step back, startled. The figure did not move to attack her. It simply stood there, calm, studying her the way she was studying it. It looked almost like the images she had seen carved into the walls outside. 2 legs, 2 arms, a shape not too different from her own species in basic structure, though clearly not the same in details. Its face held an expression she could not quite read. Not anger, not fear, something closer to tiredness, like someone who had waited far too long for this moment. "Hello?" the figure said. Its voice matched the one she had heard earlier, calm and steady, speaking her language perfectly. "My name is not important right now. What is important is why you are here, and what you are about to learn." Vex swallowed hard, forcing her voice to stay steady. "What is this place?" The figure looked around the room slowly, as if remembering something painful. "This is a warning beacon, one of many, built long ago, scattered across this galaxy. Its purpose was simple, to warn any species who found it that danger exists beyond what they can currently imagine." "Who built it?" Vex asked. The figure's expression shifted slightly. "My people did. A very long time ago." "And who are your people?" There was a pause before the figure answered. "We were called many things by many species, across many generations. But the name we called ourselves, the name that mattered most, was simple." The figure paused again. "We were humans." The word hit Vex harder than she expected. She remembered Elder Wren's warning, spoken just hours ago, though it now felt like it belonged to a different lifetime. "I've heard that name," she said quietly. "In old stories. My people believed you were a myth, a legend used to explain things we didn't understand." The figure's expression grew sad. "Many species believe that now. It has been a very long time since anyone has seen us directly. That was intentional." "Why?" "Because," the figure said, "our story is not a simple one. And it begins the same way all great stories do, with almost nothing at all." The projection shifted, and suddenly the room around Vex changed. It was no longer the humming chamber she had entered. Instead, she found herself surrounded by images, floating in the air around her, showing scenes from long, long ago. "This is our beginning," the figure said, its voice now serving as narrator to the images unfolding around them. The images showed a small blue planet, similar to many worlds Vex had seen before. Nothing particularly special about it. But then the images zoomed closer, showing the surface of that planet, covered in different lands, oceans, and a species, humans, spread across it, living in small groups, struggling simply to survive. "When our story began, we were nothing special," the figure explained. "We were not the strongest species on our own world. We could not fly. We could not breathe underwater. Our bodies were fragile, easily hurt, easily broken. Many predators on our own planet were stronger than us, faster than us, better suited to survive than us. The images showed early humans facing countless dangers: harsh weather, dangerous animals, disease, hunger. By all natural measures, the figure continued, we should have disappeared very early in our history. Nature did not favor us. Then how did you survive? Vex asked, watching the images with growing fascination. The figure's expression shifted, something like quiet pride appearing beneath the tiredness. Because unlike many species, we did not rely only on our bodies to survive. We relied on something else, something that turned out to be far more powerful than strength or speed. What was it? We refused to stop trying, the figure said simply. No matter how many times we failed, no matter how many disasters struck us, no matter how impossible our situation seemed, we always found a way to keep going. We built tools when our bodies were not strong enough. We built shelters when nature turned against us. We worked together when individually we were too weak to survive alone. The images shifted again, showing humans slowly building simple structures, working together in larger and larger groups, developing tools, fire, agriculture. Slowly, the figure continued. Generation after generation, we grew. Not because we became naturally stronger, but because we became smarter, more determined, and more willing to help each other survive. Vex watched, captivated, as centuries passed within the images in mere moments. Cities forming, then growing larger, technology developing step by step. But, the figure said, its voice growing heavier, growth was never simple for us. We were not a united species. We fought amongst ourselves constantly, even as we fought to survive against everything else. The images darkened, showing scenes of conflict. Humans fighting other humans. Wars breaking out across their small planet. Destruction spreading in waves. We came close to destroying ourselves more times than I can count, the figure admitted. Wars fought with weapons we should never have created. Diseases that spread because we refused to work together in time. Disasters made worse by our own mistakes. Vex felt a strange sadness watching the images. How did you survive all of that? The figure was silent for a long moment before answering. Barely, it said finally. Every single time we came close to the edge of complete destruction, and every single time, just when it seemed like everything would end, enough of us chose to keep fighting for something better instead of giving up completely. The images shifted once more, showing humans finally reaching beyond their own planet. Small ships, early and clumsy compared to what Vex's people currently used, but still humans reaching toward the stars despite everything working against them. Eventually, the figure continued, we left our homeworld. Slowly, carefully, we began exploring what lay beyond, and that is when everything changed. The images shifted dramatically now, becoming darker, more chaotic. Vex felt a cold unease settle over her as she watched. What happened? She asked quietly. The figure's expression turned grave. We were not the only species exploring the stars, and not everything we found out there was friendly. The images showed massive shapes moving through deep space, shapes that did not look like any ship Vex had ever seen, dark and immense, unlike anything built by known civilizations. There are things in this galaxy, the figure said slowly, older than any species currently living, things that predate even us, things that do not think or feel the way we do, things that see young growing civilizations as nothing more than resources to be consumed. Vex's chest tightened. What things? The figure hesitated, as if even speaking of them caused pain. We do not have a simple name for them. Our ancestors called them many things across many cultures. Devourers, the old dark, the silence that follows civilizations into extinction. But whatever name is used, the danger they represent remains the same. The images showed entire fleets of these strange, dark shapes moving silently between stars, and beneath them, worlds that had once held life, now empty, lifeless, destroyed. They do not attack quickly, the figure explained. They are patient. They wait until a civilization grows large enough, advanced enough to be worth their attention, and then, without warning, They consume everything that civilization has built. Vex felt her hands trembling. And you fought them? The figure nodded slowly. We had no choice. When they came for us, we were still young as a spacefaring species. We were not ready. But just as we had done throughout our entire history, we refused to simply accept destruction. The images showed a massive, desperate battle. Human ships, small and outmatched, fighting against the overwhelming darkness of these ancient enemies. We lost many worlds, the figure said, its voice heavy with old grief. We lost countless lives. But in the end, through sacrifice, determination, and refusing to surrender even when victory seemed impossible, we survived. We pushed them back. The images slowly calmed, showing the aftermath of the Great War. Humanity, battered but still standing, beginning to rebuild once again. After that war, the figure continued, we understood something important. We were not the only young civilization in this galaxy. Others would rise after us just as vulnerable, just as unprepared as we once were. Vex looked up at the figure, beginning to understand. That's why you built this place and others like it. The figure nodded. We built warning beacons across the galaxy, hidden in places unlikely to be found by accident, activated only when a species advanced enough to reach them stumbled upon their signal. Their purpose was simple: to warn, to prepare, and if necessary, to call for help. Call for help from who? Vex asked. The figure's expression grew distant, almost sorrowful. From us. Vex stared at the figure, processing everything she had just learned. But if you built these beacons so long ago, where is your species now? Why haven't we seen you, if you're still watching over the galaxy? The figure was silent for a long moment, and the images around them faded, returning the room to its quiet, humming stillness. After the war, the figure finally said, we changed. Surviving against something so much older and more powerful than us required more than just courage and determination. It required growth beyond what we had been before. What do you mean? We evolved, the figure said simply. Not just our bodies, but our understanding, our technology, our very way of existing. We became something different from what we once were. Something other species began to call an elder species. Vex's mind raced, remembering Elder Wren's old stories. The legends passed down through generations, warning of ancient species who had come before all known civilizations. You're the ones from the old legends, she whispered, the ones everyone thought had disappeared. We did not disappear, the figure said quietly. We simply stepped back. We chose to remain hidden, watching from a distance, allowing younger civilizations like yours to grow and develop on their own path, without our shadow looming over you. Why? The figure's eyes, though only a projection, seemed filled with old wisdom and old pain. Because we remembered what it felt like to be small, afraid, and unprepared. We did not want younger species to grow dependent on us or fearful of us. We wanted you to have the chance to become strong in your own way, just as we once did. Vex felt a chill run down her spine as the pieces began to fit together. But then why activate now? Why show yourself to me? The figure's expression turned serious, almost urgent. Because, it said slowly, the same darkness that once nearly destroyed us all those centuries ago is stirring again. And this time, it is closer than ever before. The chamber around them trembled slightly, the lights flickering for just a moment. You triggered this beacon by finding it, the figure continued, which means the ancient enemy is close enough for its presence to activate our old warning systems. Your people, Vex, may not have much time left before you face something none of you are prepared for. Vex's heart pounded as the weight of those words settled over her. What do we do? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The figure looked at her steadily, its ancient, tired eyes filled with something between sympathy and determination. You listen, it said, and you prepare. Because very soon, Vex, your people are going to need help. And whether you are ready or not, that help is already on its way. Far beyond the ancient structure, deep in the darkness of unexplored space, something massive began to move. Old, powerful, and awake after a very long sleep. The chamber shook again, harder this time. Dust and small pieces of debris fell from the high ceiling, though the ancient structure itself seemed strong enough to withstand it. Vex stumbled backward, catching herself against a nearby wall. What's happening? The figure's projection flickered, its calm expression now edged with urgency. The beacon has finished sending its signal. Somewhere out there, my people have already heard it, but you do not have time to wait quietly for their arrival. Your own people need to know what is coming. They won't believe me, Vex said, shaking her head. They barely believe the legends existed at all. How am I supposed to explain any of this? You will not need to explain everything, the figure replied. You only need to bring them here. Let them see what you have seen. Let them understand, the same way you now understand. Vex swallowed hard, forcing herself to focus. Elder Wren tried to contact me before I lost connection. If I can reach him again, if I can get a signal out. You can, the figure said. The structure is no longer blocking outside communication. Try now. Vex quickly activated her communicator, her hand still trembling slightly. This is Vex calling Coalition Council. Elder Wren, do you copy? For a moment there was only static. Then finally a familiar voice broke through, filled with relief and worry. Vex, we lost contact with you. Are you safe? What happened? I'm safe, she said quickly. But Elder Wren, you need to hear this. Everything you told me before I left, the old stories, the warnings, they're real. All of it is real. There was a pause on the other end. Explain. Vex took a deep breath. The structure I found, it's not just some ancient ruin. It's a warning beacon, built by humans. Silence followed, heavy and long. You're certain? Elder Wren finally asked, his voice quieter than before. I've spoken to one of them, Vex said. Or something representing them. A projection, an AI, I'm not entirely sure, but it told me everything. About their history, their war against something ancient and dangerous, and why they built these beacons across the galaxy. Another pause. When Elder Wren spoke again, his voice carried a weight Vex had never heard from him before. And what did it say about why the beacon activated now? Vex hesitated before answering. It said the same enemy that nearly destroyed them long ago is returning. And it's close. Closer than we ever imagined. The silence that followed felt different this time. Heavier, filled with fear. Return immediately, Elder Wren finally said. Bring everything you've recorded. We need to convene the full council. There's something else, Vex said quickly before he could end the transmission. The figure said help is already on its way, that the humans themselves are coming. By the time Vex's ship docked back at the Coalition's main space station, word of her discovery had already begun spreading through the highest levels of leadership. She was quickly escorted to the council chamber, where every elder from every major coalition world had gathered, their expressions a mixture of curiosity, doubt, and barely hidden fear. Elder Wren stood at the front of the room as Vex entered. Show us, he said simply. Vex connected her ship's recorded data to the chamber's main display, and the images she had seen inside the structure began playing for the entire council to witness. The ancient carvings, the projection of the human figure, the story of humanity's fragile beginning, their wars, their evolution, and their warning about a returning threat. The room remained silent throughout the entire recording. When it finally ended, no one spoke for a long moment. Finally, a council member from one of the outer systems broke the silence. This could be false, a trick. How do we know this projection told the truth? Because, Elder Wren said quietly, the wreckage Vex found near the structure matches records buried deep in our own oldest archives. Records so old that most of our species assume they were nothing more than exaggerated legend. He gestured and new images appeared on the display. Old Coalition records, dusty and nearly forgotten, showing fragmented reports from thousands of years ago. Reports of strange, powerful beings encountered briefly by ancient explorers. Reports that had always been dismissed as myths, mistranslations, or outright fabrications. "We were wrong to dismiss them," Elder Wren said. "The legends were never myths. They were memories, passed down so many generations that they eventually became stories no one believed." The council chamber fell into uneasy murmurs. "If this ancient threat is truly returning," another council member asked, "what can we possibly do to prepare? We do not even know what we are facing." Vex stepped forward, her voice steady despite her nerves. The human figure said help is coming, that we won't be facing this alone. "And you trust that?" someone challenged. "You trust the word of a species that vanished thousands of years ago, based only on a single encounter?" Vex hesitated, but only for a moment. "I trust what I saw," she said firmly. "I trust the honesty in that projection's voice when it spoke of loss, of sacrifice, of wanting to protect species like ours from repeating their mistakes. If that was a lie, it was the most convincing lie I have ever witnessed." The chamber fell silent again, this time filled with quiet contemplation rather than doubt. Before anyone could respond further, a sudden alert rang out across the entire station. Every screen in the council chamber flickered, switching to emergency sensor readings. "Unknown ship detected," a mechanical voice announced. "Approaching at extreme speed. Origin unknown." Panic spread quickly through the council chamber as members rushed toward the main viewing window, staring out into space. At first, there was nothing visible. Then gradually a shape began to appear, not rushing aggressively toward them, but approaching slowly, deliberately, as if allowing itself to be seen clearly before coming any closer. The ship was unlike anything the Coalition had ever built. It was sleek, elegant, seemingly simple in design, and yet radiating a sense of immense power that even Vex, standing far away behind reinforced viewing glass, could feel deep in her chest. "Identify yourself," the station's automatic defense system commanded, its voice broadcasting outward toward the approaching vessel. For a moment, there was no response. Then, calmly, steadily, a voice echoed through every speaker in the Coalition station simultaneously. A voice eerily similar to the one Vex had heard inside the ancient structure. "We are not here to harm you," the voice said. "We are here because our old warning system has been triggered. We are here because you are not yet ready for what is coming. And we are here to help, if you will allow us." The council chamber stood frozen, every elder staring out at the approaching ship in stunned silence. Elder Wren slowly stepped toward the viewing window, his expression unreadable. "Lower the defense systems," he finally commanded. "Let them approach." The human ship docked gently at the station, causing barely a tremor despite its immense size compared to typical Coalition vessels. As the docking bay doors slowly opened, tension filled the air, every Coalition member present holding their breath, uncertain of what, or who, would step through. When the doors finally opened completely, a single figure walked forward. Unlike the projection Vex had seen inside the ancient structure, this figure was completely real, solid, undeniably present. It looked remarkably similar to the images from the beacon's history. 2 arms, 2 legs, a form not drastically different from many known species, yet carrying itself with a quiet confidence that immediately commanded attention. The figure stopped several steps into the docking bay, looking calmly around at the nervous Coalition members surrounding it. "My name is Kyle," the figure said simply, its voice calm and steady, echoing slightly the same tone Vex remembered from the beacon's projection. "I am here on behalf of the Human Alliance." Elder Wren stepped forward cautiously, his voice careful but firm. "You claim to be human, the same species from our oldest legends?" Kale nodded slowly. "The very same, though we have changed a great deal since the stories your people remember." "You vanished," Elder Wren said, "thousands of years ago. Why show yourselves now?" Kale's expression grew serious. "Because the same enemy that once nearly destroyed us has returned, and this time based on the readings from our monitoring systems, its path leads directly through your territory." A wave of fearful murmurs spread through the gathered Coalition members. "What exactly are we facing?" Elder Wren asked. Kale hesitated slightly before answering. An ancient, extremely powerful species, or perhaps more accurately, a collective intelligence, that we have called, for lack of a better term, the Devourers. They consume advanced civilizations, stripping away their technology, their resources, and ultimately their existence. How much time do we have? Someone else asked nervously. Based on their current trajectory, Kyle said, several months at most before they reach the outer edges of your territory. The chamber erupted into worried conversation, fear spreading rapidly among the coalition leaders. Silence, Elder Wren commanded firmly, and the room slowly quieted. He turned back to Kale. You said you are here to help. What kind of help can you offer against a threat of this magnitude? Kale's expression remained calm, though his eyes carried the weight of old, hard-earned wisdom. Knowledge, first and foremost. We have faced this enemy before. We know their patterns, their weaknesses, and their methods of attack. Second, technology. Carefully shared, appropriate to your current level of development, designed to strengthen your defenses without overwhelming your natural growth. And why would you help us at all? Another council member asked skeptically. What benefit does your species gain from protecting ours? Kyle's gaze swept slowly across the room, finally settling on Vex, who stood quietly near the back of the gathered crowd. Because, Kyle said, his voice softening slightly, we remember what it felt like to be young, vulnerable, and facing extinction with seemingly no hope of survival. We remember the price paid by those who fought to ensure future generations of humanity would have a chance to grow, to thrive, to become more than what we once were. He paused, looking around at the entire Coalition Council. We do not wish for any other species to endure that same suffering if it can be avoided. That is why these beacons exist. That is why we still watch quietly over this galaxy, even after all this time. And that is why we are here now, offering our help, expecting nothing in return except the chance for your species to survive and grow, just as we once did. The chamber fell into a heavy, thoughtful silence. Elder Wren studied Kyle carefully for a long moment before finally speaking. Very well. On behalf of the Coalition Council, we accept your offer of assistance. What do you need from us? Kale's expression shifted slightly, something like quiet relief passing briefly across his face. Time, first and foremost, to properly organize training and share critical knowledge. Cooperation, from every coalition member willing to prepare rather than panic. And trust, difficult as that may be to offer a species you barely know. You will have all three, Elder Wren said firmly, glancing briefly toward Vex with something like gratitude in his expression. Thanks to the courage of one of our own, who refused simply to follow orders when curiosity called her toward answers we desperately needed. Vex felt a rush of emotion at those words, pride mixed uneasily with the weight of responsibility now resting on her shoulders. Kale turned toward her, offering a small, respectful nod. You did well, Vex. Many species who encounter our beacons never make it far enough to hear the full warning. Your courage may have just saved your entire civilization. Vex swallowed hard, unsure how to respond to such praise. I only wanted answers, she said quietly. I never expected any of this. Kyle's expression softened into something resembling a small, understanding smile. That is often how the most important discoveries begin. Outside the station, unseen by anyone gathered within the docking bay, the vast emptiness of space remained calm and quiet, stars twinkling steadily as they always had. But far beyond the edges of Coalition territory, in the deep darkness between distant star systems, something massive continued its slow, deliberate approach, patient, ancient, and utterly indifferent to the fear it inspired in every civilization unfortunate enough to sense its presence. The Coalition had been warned. Humanity had returned, not as legend, not as myth, but as real, present allies prepared to help however they could. But whether that would be enough to survive what was coming, no one, not even Kale himself, could say for certain. The countdown toward humanity's greatest test since its original war had already begun. 3 months passed since Kale's ship first arrived at the Coalition station, and in that time, everything had changed. What had once been a proud but somewhat complacent civilization was now working harder than it ever had before. Coalition scientists studied every piece of technology Kale's people shared with them. Coalition engineers worked around the clock, upgrading defense systems, shield technology, and weapons based on human designs. Designs simplified just enough to match the Coalition's current understanding, yet powerful enough to make a real difference. Vex had become an unlikely bridge between the two civilizations. She spent countless hours with Kale and the small team of humans who had arrived alongside him, learning everything she could, translating complex ideas into terms her own people could understand. "You've adapted faster than most species we've encountered," Kale told her one evening, as they stood together in the station's observation deck, staring out at the stars. "Some civilizations take years to accept help. Your people did it in months. Fear is a powerful motivator," Vex said quietly. Once the council saw the full truth, there wasn't much room left for pride. Kyle nodded slowly. "That was true for us too once. Sometimes it takes staring extinction directly in the face before a species truly commits to working together." Vex glanced at him. In the months since his arrival, she had grown to respect Kyle deeply, not just as a representative of an ancient, powerful civilization, but as an individual who still carried the weight of loss from his own species' long history. "Do you think we're ready?" she asked quietly. "For when they arrive?" Kale's expression grew serious, and for a long moment he didn't answer. "Ready is a difficult word," he finally said. "No civilization is ever fully ready for the Devourers. But you are far more prepared now than you were 3 months ago. That will have to be enough." As if summoned by his words, an alarm suddenly blared through the station. "Unidentified objects detected," the station's automated system announced. "Multiple signatures, approaching from Outer Sector 7. Vex's heart sank. She and Kale rushed toward the council chamber, where Elder Wren and the rest of the Coalition leadership were already gathering, along with the small team of human advisors who had been working alongside them for months. "Report," Elder Wren commanded as they entered. A young Coalition officer, her voice trembling slightly, pointed toward the main display. "Multiple large objects moving in formation approaching at high speed. Origin matches the trajectory Kale's people predicted months ago." The chamber fell into tense silence as everyone stared at the display, watching dozens of massive dark shapes moving steadily closer. Kyle stepped forward, studying the readings carefully. His expression, usually calm and composed, grew tight with concern. "That's a larger force than we expected," he said quietly. "How much larger?" Elder Wren asked. "Significantly," Kyle admitted. "This isn't a small scouting group. This looks like a full invasion force." Panic threatened to spread through the chamber, but Elder Wren raised his hand firmly. "We prepared for this. We trained for this. Now is not the time for fear." He turned to Kale. "What do you recommend?" Kale took a deep breath, his mind clearly working through countless calculations and strategies developed from centuries of hard-earned experience. "We need to activate the full defense network immediately. Every ship, every station, every planet within range needs to move to their prepared positions." "And your people?" Elder Wren asked. "Will they be joining the fight?" Kale nodded firmly. "My ship already sent word the moment we detected this approach. Reinforcements are on their way, but it will take time for them to arrive. Until then, we fight together, using everything we've prepared these past 3 months." Elder Wren turned to address the entire council chamber, his voice carrying the same calm strength that had guided the Coalition through countless challenges before. "You heard him. Prepare every available defense. Contact all Coalition worlds immediately. Today we stand together or we fall together." The battle that followed was unlike anything the Coalition had ever experienced. The Devourer fleet arrived exactly as predicted, massive dark ships moving with eerie, silent precision, surrounding key Coalition positions with terrifying efficiency. Unlike Coalition ships, which relied on visible weapons and shields, The Devourer vessels seemed to consume everything they touched, draining power directly from nearby ships, disabling systems without ever firing a single visible weapon. "They're draining our shields!" a Coalition officer shouted from the command center as Vex watched the battle unfold on multiple screens. "Systems failing across the western defense line." Kyle, standing beside Elder Wren near the main command display, remained remarkably calm despite the chaos surrounding them. "This matches their known attack pattern," he said. "They target power systems first, weakening defenses before moving in for direct assault." "Then how do we stop them?" Elder Wren asked urgently. "The technology we shared with your engineers," Kale said. "The modified shield frequencies. Have your ships activate them now." Orders were relayed instantly across the Coalition fleet. Slowly, hesitantly, the effect began to show. Coalition ships that had been losing power suddenly stabilized, their modified shields resisting the strange draining effect the Devourers relied on. "It's working," the officer shouted, relief evident in her voice. "Power drain rate dropping significantly across multiple ships." But the celebration was short-lived. Even with their shields holding, the sheer number of Devourer ships continued pressing forward, overwhelming Coalition defenses through sheer numbers rather than raw power. "We're still losing ground," Elder Wren said grimly, watching as several Coalition outposts reported critical damage. "How long until your reinforcements arrive?" Kyle checked the readings on a nearby console, his expression tightening with concern. "Too long," he admitted. "At this rate, several key positions will fall before help arrives." Vex, watching from nearby, felt a surge of desperation. "There has to be something else we can do." Kyle turned to her, studying her expression carefully. Something in his eyes shifted, as if considering a difficult decision. "There is one option," he said slowly, "but it's extremely risky." "Tell us," Elder Wren said firmly. Kale took a deep breath. "The beacon Vex discovered, the one that first alerted us to this threat, it wasn't just a warning system. It also contains a defensive protocol, designed specifically to disrupt Devourer formations temporarily. But activating it requires someone to physically return to the beacon and manually trigger the sequence." "How long would that take?" Elder Wren asked. "Given the beacon's distance from here and the time needed to properly activate the sequence," Kyle said. "Approximately 30 minutes, assuming everything goes smoothly." "And if it doesn't go smoothly?" Vex asked quietly. Kale's expression grew grave. "Then whoever attempts this will likely not survive the attempt." The chamber fell silent, the weight of that statement settling heavily over everyone present. "I'll go," Vex said suddenly, stepping forward before she could fully process her own decision. "Vex," Elder Wren started, concern evident in his voice. "I found the beacon," she said firmly. "I understand its systems better than anyone else here, aside from Kale himself. If this can help turn the tide of this battle, I need to try." Kale studied her for a long moment, clearly torn between admiration for her courage and concern for her safety. "The risk is significant," he said quietly. "I know," Vex replied. "But if I don't try, how many more will die while we wait for reinforcements that might arrive too late?" Elder Wren looked between Vex and Kale, understanding the weight of the decision resting on his shoulders as the Coalition's leader. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Go. But take every precaution possible." Kale quickly stepped forward. "I'll accompany you. The activation sequence is complex and you'll need guidance to complete it safely." Elder Wren nodded firmly. "Then go now, both of you. We'll hold the line as long as we possibly can." Vex and Kale raced toward the ancient beacon aboard a small, fast Coalition vessel, weaving carefully through the chaos of battle raging around them. Explosions lit up the darkness of space as Coalition ships fought desperately against the overwhelming Devourer forces. "We're almost there," Vex said, watching the massive structure grow larger on their view screen. "Once we land," Kale said, "we'll need to move quickly. The activation sequence requires precise timing, and we won't have long before Devourer forces likely notice the beacon's power signature increasing." They landed swiftly, rushing into the now familiar chamber where Vex had first learned the truth about humanity's history. The blue lights flickered to life around them as they entered, the structure recognizing Vex's presence from her previous visit. "This way," Kyle said, leading her deeper into the structure toward a section she hadn't explored before. They reached a large, circular platform, similar to the one where Vex had first encountered the human projection, but this one was surrounded by intricate controls, clearly designed for direct interaction. "Here," Kale said, quickly beginning to input a complex sequence of commands. "The defensive protocol will emit a powerful pulse, specifically calibrated to disrupt devourer formations temporarily, weakening their coordination and giving our forces a chance to regroup." "How long will the effect last?" Vex asked, watching nervously as Kyle worked. "Only a few minutes," Kyle admitted. "But it should be enough time for reinforcements to arrive, if we're fortunate." As Kale continued the activation sequence, the chamber trembled violently, debris falling from the ceiling as the ancient structure strained under the pressure of powering up its long, dormant defensive systems. "Almost there," Kyle said, his voice strained with concentration. "Just a few more moments." Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the chamber. "They've noticed us," Kale said grimly, glancing at a nearby display showing several devourer ships breaking away from the main battle, turning directly toward their position. "Can you finish in time?" Vex asked urgently. "I have to," Kale replied firmly, his hands moving even faster across the controls. The structure shook again, more violently this time, as the approaching devourer ships opened fire, their strange, draining weapons targeting the ancient beacon directly. "Almost," Kyle started, just as a massive tremor shook the entire chamber, knocking both of them off balance. Vex caught herself against a nearby console, watching in horror as several critical systems flickered dangerously. "Kale, the controls, I see it," Kale said, quickly adjusting his approach. "The devourers are targeting our power core directly. If it fails now, we lose everything." With sheer determination, Kale input the final sequence of commands, his hands moving with practiced precision despite the chaos surrounding them. "Activating now," he shouted, slamming his hand against the final control. The entire structure surged with brilliant light, energy pulsing outward in a massive wave that spread rapidly beyond the beacon, racing toward the heart of the ongoing battle. Back at the main battlefield, Coalition forces watched in stunned amazement as a powerful wave of energy swept across the battlefield, washing over the Devourer fleet like an invisible tide. Instantly, the coordinated movements of the Devourer ships faltered, their formations breaking apart as confusion spread visibly through their ranks. "Their formations are disrupted," a Coalition officer shouted excitedly. "Systems show significant weaknesses across multiple enemy positions." "Now's our chance," Elder Wren commanded firmly. "All ships, focus fire on the weakened positions immediately." Coalition forces surged forward, taking full advantage of the temporary chaos among Devourer ranks, striking decisively at previously impenetrable defenses. Just as the disruptive effect began to fade, and the Devourer forces started regrouping, a massive new fleet emerged suddenly from the darkness beyond Coalition territory. Sleek, powerful human ships, arriving exactly when needed most. "Reinforcements have arrived," the officer shouted excitedly. "Human fleet confirmed, engaging Devourer forces directly." The battle shifted dramatically as human reinforcements joined the fight, their advanced technology and centuries of hard-earned combat experience against the Devourers, turning the tide decisively in the Coalition's favor. Within the hour, the once overwhelming Devourer force had been pushed back entirely, retreating into the darkness from which they came, unable to withstand the combined might of Coalition determination and human experience. Back at the ancient beacon, Vex slowly regained consciousness, finding herself lying on the chamber floor, Kale kneeling beside her, relief evident on his face. "You're safe," Kale said softly. "The battle's over. We won." Vex sat up slowly, still slightly dazed. "The activation sequence succeeded," Kale confirmed, a small, tired smile crossing his face. "Thanks to your courage, we bought exactly enough time for reinforcements to arrive." Vex let out a shaky breath, relief flooding through her exhausted body. We actually did it. Kale nodded, helping her carefully to her feet. Yes, together. As they made their way back outside the ancient structure, Vex paused, looking out at the now quiet battlefield, scattered debris drifting silently amid the stars, a stark reminder of how close they had come to disaster. What happens now? She asked quietly. Kale considered the question carefully before answering. Now your people begin truly understanding what it means to stand alongside others, rather than simply believing yourselves to be alone in this galaxy. And perhaps in time your civilization will grow strong enough to help other young species just as we once helped you. Vex looked at him, a small, hopeful smile forming despite her exhaustion. Like humanity always has. Kale smiled softly in return. Exactly like that. Weeks later, as the Coalition slowly rebuilt from the battle, a formal ceremony was held aboard the main Coalition station, honoring both the bravery of Coalition forces and the timely assistance from their newfound human allies. Elder Wren stood before the gathered crowd, his voice carrying clearly across the chamber. For centuries our species believed ourselves to be among the most advanced civilizations in this galaxy. We believed the old stories of an ancient, powerful species were nothing more than myths, meant to remind us of our own achievements. He paused, glancing toward Kyle and the human delegation standing respectfully nearby. We were wrong, Elder Wren admitted humbly. Humanity was never a myth. They were never gone. They were simply waiting, quietly watching over the galaxy, ready to help whenever another young civilization needed guidance. He turned to address Kale directly. On behalf of the entire Coalition, we offer our deepest gratitude. Without your people's help, our civilization would not exist today. Kale stepped forward, addressing the crowd respectfully. We did what we could, but the true courage came from your own people, especially from one individual who refused to accept ignorance over truth, danger over duty. He gestured toward Vex, who stood quietly near the back of the gathered crowd, feeling uncomfortable beneath the sudden attention. Vex's bravery, Kale continued, reminded us why we continue this work, generation after generation. Because sometimes, all it takes to change history is a single individual, brave enough to seek truth, even when warned against it. The crowd applauded warmly, and Vex felt a rush of emotion as she quietly accepted the recognition. Later, as the ceremony ended and the crowd slowly dispersed, Vex found herself once again standing beside Kale on the station's observation deck, staring out at the peaceful stars above. Will you and your people stay? She asked quietly. Now that the immediate danger has passed? Kale shook his head gently. No. Our purpose has always been to guide, not to remain permanently. Your civilization must continue growing on its own path just as ours once did. But the beacon, Vex said, the threat could return someday. It could, Kyle admitted, but your people are far stronger now than you were before. And should you ever need us again, you know how to reach us. Vex nodded slowly, understanding the quiet wisdom behind his words. As Kale's ship prepared to depart days later, Vex watched from the station's viewing deck, reflecting on everything that had happened since she first detected that mysterious signal months ago. Her people had once believed themselves to be alone in the galaxy, the most advanced civilization among the stars. But now, they understood a deeper truth. One whispered quietly through legends, forgotten across countless generations, finally rediscovered just in time. Humanity had never truly disappeared. They had simply been waiting patiently in the shadows, watching over the galaxy they had fought so hard to protect, ready to step forward once again, exactly when they were needed most. And as Kale's ship disappeared silently into the vastness of space, Vex smiled quietly to herself, understanding that this was not truly an ending. It was simply the beginning of a new chapter, one where humanity, the galaxy's true original elder species, would continue watching quietly from the shadows, ready to help whenever the next young civilization needed them most.